Hey everyone, welcome back to the poker vlog. It is Wednesday, June 28th, and we're going to get in a session today. We're going to go to Resorts World and jump into a 1-3 game. But first I wanted to share a hand that I played with you on Monday. I got in a session at South Point. I got into the 1-2 streets there. And I got into an interesting hand at the end of the session. I was under the gun with Queen Jack of clubs. I raised it up to $10. That's going to be a standard open for me under the gun. And we get called by middle position 1, middle position 2, and we get called by the low jack. So we're going 4 ways to a flop, and the flop comes down Ace 7 9 with 2 clubs. So I'm under the gun, I'm first to act, and I've got 3 opponents. I think I want to keep continuation betting on this board, even though there's a strong chance that someone has an ace. We want to build a pot in case we do complete our draw. We've got the flush draw, and we've got some backdoor possibilities. So I fire out a C bet of $20. And the middle position player calls, middle position player 2 calls, and the low jack calls. So we end up going to a turn, which is the 10 of hearts. Doesn't complete the flush draw, but it does give me more outs. Now I have any 8 will give me the straight, and any king will give me the nut straight, plus any club will give me the flush on the river. So I decide on this turn card, since I improved and I have more equity, to keep betting. So I fire out a bet of $50. It might be on the low side. I might be wanting to bet larger here with my bluffs. But as played, I put in a $50 bet. Middle position 1 gets out of the way. Middle position 2 gets out of the way. And the low jack calls. So we go heads up to a river, which is the brickiest of all brickiest rivers. It's the deuce of hearts. We completely miss, and we're first to act on the river. I think this gentleman has an ace all day long. The question is just how strong of an ace does he have? So I'm thinking about all the value that would be in my range here, which there's a lot of value hands that I could credibly represent here. So if I go all in, I would play ace king that way. I would play ace queen this way. I would probably play ace jack this way if I raised ace jack suited under the gun. Definitely ace 10 for 2 pair. I can credibly represent aces in this spot. I would also do this with a set of 10s and a set of 9s. So I think there's a fair amount of value in my range here. What I would be doing this with bluffs is obviously missed draws, like a missed club draw, missed straight draws, hands like 9-8 of clubs, maybe 7-6 clubs, although not raising 7-6 clubs under the gun, but you get what I mean, right? There are some club draws, like the hand that I have, queen jack of clubs, king queen of clubs, 9-8 of clubs, 10x of clubs that I might have, like queen 10 of clubs, something like that, right? So those are all of the bluffs that I have in my range here. The question then is back to the other player who's an OMC. Definitely like typical profile for this guy, like OMC. And he can certainly have ace king, ace queen, ace jack in his range. Guys at this level with his profile type love to just flat call with those hands pre-flop. They don't care if it goes multi-way. They never 3-bet those hands. So ace king suited, ace queen suited, ace jack suited, ace 10 suited are all in range for him. And the question is, will he ever fold those types of hands to a bluff on this river? I think he probably won't. And now that I look back on this hand and I think, what can I reasonably put him on that he would fold? I don't think there's anything that he's going to have in his range besides ace X. So I think the only hands that maybe reasonably will fold are weaker aces, like ace 7 maybe, but that's two pair, so I don't think he's folding two pairs. So maybe ace 6 suited, ace 4 suited, suited aces like that he might have called with, he may fold, although I think that's pretty ambitious. I just don't know if this player type at this level is capable of folding an ace. But bottom line is, I think my only option here is either to check and give up or go ahead and continue telling the story that I have a strong value hand. So I ultimately decide to go ahead and get it all in. I've got about $180-ish left. By the way, effective stacks were $300. So I go ahead and jam. I go ahead and shove all in here. We're going to continue telling the story that we've got the strong hand. He doesn't think too long, maybe 15 seconds before going ahead and putting in the call. I just tell him he's good, and he turns over ace queen offsuit, and he takes down that $300 pot. I mean, there's a couple things here that I think are worthwhile to discuss. Bluffing multi-way, I think, is number one. You end up with 3 players that call pre-flop. I think you probably should be more apt to just check and try to pot control on the turn versus continuing to bet. I think as played on the river, I should probably just check and give up if he bets. My guess, though, is that if I check on that river, he just checks back. He won't value bet that river, which is crazy, but he wouldn't have value betted that river. He would have just checked it back. But I think bluffing in multi-way pots is challenging, if not suicide. And 2, I think profile type is just super important. I think this particular profile type, they're just never folding an ace, and they're capable of calling strong aces pre-flop. So I think it's just check fold on the river if he does bet. So yeah, curious to hear what other people think of this spot. Obviously, not great for me. I punted off a buy-in here, but what are you gonna do? That's the way it goes sometimes in these 1-2 streets. So stay tuned. We're gonna be heading to Resorts World. I'll see you guys at the tables. First playable hand we pick up for the session is ace-jack offsuit in the cutoff. Folds around to us, and we go ahead and raise it up to $10. Standard open raise here in this position. Button folds, small blind reluctantly calls after trying to just limp in, and we see a flop of king, jack 9. Small blind checks. It's a pretty dynamic board, but we did catch a little piece of it. So I fire out a continuation bet of $9. The small blind basically snap calls, and we see the deuce of spades. Small blind checks, I check, nine of clubs on the river. Now the small blind decides to put out a rather large bet here on this river. Almost pot-sized bet. He makes it $45 to go. I don't think too long here before just letting my hand go and folding. I think he could have some hands like 9x, 10-9, 9-8 that would play this way. Not too many bluffs in his range. All right, next hand we have King Queen offsuit in the hijack. It folds around to us. We raise this to $10 and the cutoff quickly calls. So we are going heads up here to a flop. The flop comes down pretty connected and monotone. 4, 7, 6, all spades. We do have the queen of spades. I fire out for $15, and the cutoff doesn't think too long here before putting in the call. We see the jack of clubs peel off on the turn. I think the cutoff is going to have a fair amount of hands like Jack 10 with the jack of spades or the 10 of spades, 10-9 with the 10 of spades. So I keep firing here. I put in a bet of $25 and the cutoff calls. We see the 9 of spades on the river. I'm going to value bet this. I put out a $45 bet here. We could be going a little larger, but I want to call. And the cutoff tanks here, so I'm thinking that my read was spot on, that he's got a lower spade here in his hand. He certainly doesn't have the ace of spades, so I'm praying for a call when he's taking this long. I think we have the best hand. He does put in the call. I show the queen of spades, and he shows king queen with the king of spades. So we end up value owning ourselves there on the river. Nice answer. He takes the pot down. All right, I was taking notes and started recording late on this. Still learning this whole vlogging thing, so bear with me here, guys. Under the gun raised to 10. We call 10 and go heads up to a flop of ace 7, 9 with 2 spades. We've got the king jack of spades, so when the under the gun fires a $10 continuation bet, we decide to just call. See the 3 of clubs on the turn. Goes check, check, and the queen of spades peels off on the river, giving us the nuts. So when under the gun checks, we decide to fire out a value bet here of $30, and he quickly folds. I think we could have went maybe a little bit smaller there on the river, trying to get a call from a weak ace, maybe a hand like ace 4 suited or ace 5 suited. But as played, we take down that pot. Okay, this one we've got the number one, the pocket aces in the cutoff. Raised to $10 after it folds around to us. Button calls, and the small blind decides to put in the call as well. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of 8-3-3. Pretty raggy board, but I think small blind can certainly have hands like 9-8, 10-8, Jack 8, Queen 8, suited variety. So I'm hoping to get some value here, but when I fire out a continuation bet of $15, unfortunately our pocket aces get no action. So we take down a small one and we move on to the next hand. And the next hand is ace queen offsuit, under the gun +1. We're going to be raising this up, making it $10 to go pre-flop, and we get one customer in the small blind. This gentleman just sat down at the table maybe 15-20 minutes earlier, and he seems super tilted already. We go to a flop of ace 9-10 rainbow. He checks. No reason to not continue betting here. I think we can get called by a lot of worse hands. So I fire out $15 and he snap calls. Before I even get the money over the line, he's already put the money in. We see the queen of spades on the turn, so when he checks to us and we have top 2 pair, no reason to slow down here. I'm going to continue value betting. I put out a bet of $30, and again, he snap calls, throwing in a $100 chip and saying call. I think he's got a lot of ace X in his range here. He could have hands like ace 8, ace 7, ace 6, all of the suited variety and the non-suited variety. He can have ace jack. So when we see the 9 of clubs on the river and he checks, I think we should be betting here 100% of the time, but we make a very bad check back. We do take down the pot, but I think we missed out on a lot of value on that river. This is a fun one. We've got pocket fours on the button. It folds around to us. We raise it up to $10, and we get one customer in the big blind who puts in the call. This player has been very, very active all session. So when I see the 4 of clubs in the window, we flop bottom set. He checks. I'm going to be value betting all day here. I make it $10 to go, and he quickly calls the $10 bet. We see the 8 of diamonds on the turn. He checks again. No reason for us to slow down. We rate to have the best hand here 100% of the time. I make it $20 to go, and he doesn't think too long before putting in the call. And we see the 4 of hearts on the river. We river quads. When he checks to us again, now it's a question of what do I want to do and how can I get paid here? Do I want to bet small? Do I want to bet big? I decide to go big. I go over pot for $100. I just had a read that this player might make a move if he thought I was trying to buy the pot or bluffing. So I went over pot here, and unfortunately he decides to fold. So we don't get paid with our quads. I think there's an argument to be made to go small and maybe try to induce by putting in a smaller bet. Either way, as played, we take down this pot. Buckle up. This is the hand of the session. It's going to be a fun one. We're under the gun with pocket jacks. We raise it up to $10. Under the gun +1 puts in the $10 call, and it folds around to our tilted friend on the button. He seems even more tilted now at this point in the session. So we're going to end up going 3 ways here to a flop. And the flop comes down pretty good for our hand. We see a flop of Jack 6-3 flopping top set on a pretty static board here. So I check. Under the gun +1 checks. Button fires for $20 here. I decide to just go ahead and smooth call and just let him keep firing. And the under the gun player gets out of the way pretty quickly. So we're going to go heads up now to the turn. Turn is pretty clean. It's the 5 of spades. The button doesn't think too long before continuing to put money in this pot. He puts a $30 bet out there pretty quick. Now it's a question of do we want to continue smooth calling or putting more money in the middle. I think it's the latter. We want to put more money in this pot. We want to build a nice pot for the river and set ourselves up for a nice payoff. I raise it up to $90, and he snap calls the $90 in a very tilted, aggressive manner, as you can see in the video. This gentleman is in a very volatile mood, to say the least. So we go to the 9 of diamonds on the river, pretty clean for our hand. Now it's just a question of how much do we want to bet. He's got about $350 remaining, and I decide to go with a sizing of $180. I think we probably could have went a bit larger. I think we probably could have went all in. But as played, I put out a bet of $180, and this puts the gentleman into the tank. He starts counting out the chips. He says, I think I have to call. I have to see it. So he's in the tank for a good 25, 30 seconds. And ultimately, he does decide to go ahead and put in the call. And we turn over our top set, and he throws his pocket queens at me. So he smooth called on the button in position with pocket queens, and he got out flopped. And unfortunately for him, it just ends up being a pretty nasty cooler that we hit top set. And he's very upset. He's not a happy camper at this time. So I think with the pocket queens, knowing that he just called that pre-flop, and he's not folding there, we definitely could have gotten more. hate to sound too greedy, but I think we could have went all in on that river and he would have called off his entire stack. So I think we did leave some value on the table, but you know, all things considered, we take down a $604 pot with the pocket jacks. It turns out there is a right way to play pocket jacks. All right, we've got ace-9 of diamonds under the gun. I like to mix in some of these suited aces in my early position raising range, so I make it $10 to go. We get called by middle position, and we get called by the cutoff. We're going to end up going 3 ways here to a flop. Flop is not particularly good for our range. We see 3, 6, 4 with 2 clubs. I'm out of position, I check, middle position player checks, and then the cutoff decides to check as well. So we're going to go to a turn, which is the ace of spades. This card does connect with our early position raising range, so I make it $15 to go. I think we can get called by worse hands, draws, etc. Middle position player does call, cutoff gets out of the way. We're going to go heads up here to a river, which is the 4 of clubs, completing the front door flush. I elect to take a bet fold line here. I think we can still get called by worse. If he raises, I'm going to be folding here. But he does decide to just go ahead and put in the call, and I think our hand is good, but unfortunately he shows ace-queen offsuit, and we end up value owning ourselves and losing this pot. Last hand of the session, we have 6-5 of diamonds in the hijack. Folds around to us. We go ahead and raise this up to $10. The cutoff quickly calls, button calls, small blind gets out of the way, and the big blind goes ahead and puts in the call as well. So we're going to go 4 ways here to a flop. Flop comes down at 6, queen, 5 with 2 spades. Big blind checks. I don't see any reason to not bet here and try to get value from spade draws and from queen X type holdings. So I fire out for $20. Cutoff quickly folds, button calls, and the big blind goes ahead and puts in the call here as well. We see the king of hearts on the turn. Big blind checks here for a second time. I'm going to continue to bet here. I think we can get called by spade draws, by worse queen X type hands. So I make it $35 to go, and the button goes ahead and puts in the $35 call, and the big blind folds. So we're hoping for a blank here on the river, and that's what we get. We see the 3 of diamonds. I think we can continue to bet here and potentially get looked up by some of his queen X type hands that will still call us. I think most of his missed draws are just going to fold. We make it $50 to go here on the river. The button doesn't think too long here before deciding to go ahead and just release his cards. So we end up taking down this pot. I show him 2 pair. We've been friendly up to this point, and we win this $221 pot to end the night.
Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday morning, Thursday, June 29th, the next day. Played for about 4.5 hours last night. Got home a little after midnight. Was a bit tired, so I didn't do the outro video yesterday. I decided to save it for this morning. And I wanted to share with you all the results of the session. So we were in the game for 600. We were out for 615 for a profit of $15. I'll put the totals up here. Hey, it's better than a loss, right? So we basically played break-even poker. Good table. When we first sat down, it was a very aggressive table. A lot of 3-betting going on pre-flop. A lot of aggression post-flop. So I wasn't running particularly well for the first hour of the session. But then the cards started to fall our way. So we were able to recoup some of the losses that we suffered initially. I think at the one point we were down maybe around 200, and then we got that back. And then at one point we were up maybe about 150 and made some calls pre-flop with pocket pairs, trying to set mine. Made some speculative calls with suited connectors in position, trying to see if we can connect with the board and potentially get a favorable run out, but was not able to do that, so I gave some of it back. And yeah, we ended up with $15 in profit for the night. No big deal. Better than being down in the hole, as I'm sure all of you know. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thanks to all the folks at the table last night who were supporting me in the vlog. And it's always nice when people at the table are interested in what I'm doing here. So thank you all so much for the support. I didn't catch all of your names, but you know who you are if you're watching this. Leave a comment below. I'll get back to you. If you like the vlog, please do hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. All those YouTube things that we all talk about are what get this out to other folks. So the more you guys click those like, subscribe, and notification, the more people will see this and the more people that we can share this with in the poker world. So please do all of those YouTube things. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next episode.